Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are working on a newer Subaru. I'll have to look and see what year it is. 2015 Subaru Outback. They took it to the local Chrysler dealership. I think they bought it from them, and they got like a maintenance plan. So they took it over there. It had a check engine light on, lack of power. The Chrysler dealership said that it's a little over what they want to get into, so they sent it to us. We're going to go ahead and hook up the scan tool. We are going to do a pre-scan or health check here and see what codes we have, see if we can get a diagnostic path. So we have a bunch of codes here. Most of them look like history codes in the engine. The one that the Chrysler dealership was talking about was the transmission fault code. They were trying to do some testing, and they said that even if they tested it, they don't have the tools and equipment to repair it if it needed something inside the transmission. So I wonder if some of these history codes are stuff that they unhooked while they were doing their testing. So it looks like we have a lockup duty solenoid high code. It's a current fault and a history fault. Anti-lock brakes is basically saying that, hey, we have a transmission fault. We can't really trust our torque values. Some AC faults, some blind spot faults, kind of a whole bunch of stuff here. So let's clear everything and just shut the car off, restart the car, and see if it resets any of those fault codes. Because sometimes if someone else has been in there and they've had stuff unplugged, or if the battery was low, you have a bunch of codes that may not apply to what you're working on right now. I do have the battery maintainer hooked up. You can see in the bottom right corner of the scanner, we're at 14.4 volts. It says 14.2 on my maintainer. Yeah, now we're dropped down to 13.8. So we're fluctuating a little bit as I clear codes and stuff turns on and off. Typical Subaru instructions: turn the key off up to 30 seconds. When you turn them back on, you're going to want to wait 10 seconds because when you first clear codes and then turn the key back on, that first key cycle, it's relearning the throttle body. If you try to start it right away, it won't start. And it said to exit that function first, but it's all right. So right away we have a check engine light, automatic transmission temp light, bunch of lights flashing. So we have a bunch of fault codes, a bunch of fault messages. Let's go ahead and rescan for codes and see which ones came back. My guess would be the transmission code and likely other codes related to that transmission. So our engine light's on for transmission control system fault, transmission code for the lockup duty solenoid high, anti-lock brakes, it's telling us we have a transmission fault. Sun load, I'm parked inside, halfway inside, but the sun load sensor is not sensing any sun. So it'll always set that fault code on Toyotas and Subarus and many other vehicles. If you're inside, it'll set a fault code. You pull it outside and rescan it, that code will be gone. So we have some radar fault codes that came back. They didn't mention any of that stuff, but it's not here for that, so we will probably ignore that unless they want us to dig into it. Now on the original fault code list, let me go back to that real quick. There was a code for the grille shutter. And I think that's where the dealership hit the roadblock, is because they knew that it was going to need free flash for that. So there is an update for that code. It says active grille air shutter A stuck on. So we may get into that as well, because I think that they were wanting to take care of that reflash while it's here. So the code report is done. Without even driving it, we already have a code for that torque converter lockup duty solenoid. So this is a CVT transmission, but it still has a torque converter. We can check the diagnose button. It's probably going to say solenoid pack or valve body. Yeah, 8 cases of valve bodies. A service bulletin for our fault codes. I don't remember which one we had. I'll have to go back. My memory ain't that good. 2763. So we'll go back to this service bulletin. Bulletin number 16-131-20R for a whole bunch of transmission fault codes. And our 2763, is that listed? Yeah, it is listed. So it's saying that the 2763 is a high code, meaning circuit high or open. So there's two groups of codes, and it's telling us in this TSB where to do our testing. Group A vehicles have the TCM inside the cabin or mounted on the transmission or in the engine compartment. Group B are vehicles that have the TCM inside of the transmission itself. I believe this one is mounted on top of the transmission, and this valve body is likely on top of the transmission. Kind of strange design for me. Normally you have the valve body underneath, but I like it because the transmission is not dripping on me when I work on them. So we'll skim through this, but more than likely what I normally do is we just go straight to the TCM. That's the easiest place to test, and we just check resistance. It's a pretty simple test. If we have high resistance, there is a very small chance that there's high resistance in the harness, but more than likely the solenoid's bad. Now you can get solenoids from some online sources. I normally don't replace just the solenoid because those places normally don't cover a warranty. I like my customers to have a warranty, and I don't want to have to worry about it. So we normally do a complete valve body. So we need to find group A with high codes. So solenoid, check that the transmission is cool. I just pulled it in from the parking lot. It's sat since yesterday, so it is cooled off. They want us to disconnect the TCM connector and measure resistance between the TCM connector and the transmission body. So more than likely that's telling us that the solenoids are grounded to the transmission. We'll look at the wiring diagram here in a minute. So we're going to measure the solenoid to the transmission case and see what our resistance is. Now if we have all of our solenoids are elevated, then we likely have a bad ground inside the transmission. If it's only one, then it's probably a bad solenoid. It doesn't even give us pin numbers in this service bulletin. It says refer to service manual. So yeah, we're just gonna jump to the service manual. We're gonna see if there's a chart for what the resistance should be. I think that would be their best bet. We'll just find a wiring diagram. We'll find out what the resistance is supposed to be, and then we'll just measure them all and see what they're at. So the transmission control module is down here. So I'm going to pull this air intake tube off so we can get a better access to it. We should be able to unplug it and do all of our testing right here. Normally there's a shield over it, so we may have to pull that shield off, but it shouldn't be too bad. Just going to pull this screw out of this heat shield or sound deadening. And there's our transmission control module. So we should be able to unplug this connector, do all of our testing right here to check resistance. And then if it is out of range, to do any further testing, we'll actually have to pull the cover plate off the top of the transmission. So I do have the ignition off. There's a little locking tab right here. We're gonna push down on that. We can pull this lever back and hopefully unplug it. Just enough room there. Okay, so we're going to need a pin out for this connector, and sometimes these are wrong. We'll have to see if the pin out's going to be correct or not. Okay, so according to this connector, our pin number 1 is right here. Goes across. Pin number 16 is on this side over here. I have the connector view, our specifications, and our wiring diagram available on my tablet. So as we do our testing, we can easily just write down what our results are and see if we're within spec or not. So I'm going to hook up my ground to the transmission. We're going to go to resistance measurement. Do we want to calibrate this probe? Yeah, we can do that. So you just have to connect leads 3 and 4 together on the snap-on stuff to calibrate your resistance if it's a 4-channel scope. So we're at 0 ohms, we're all good. You don't want to force anything in that connector that is bigger than the pin. So we're going to be using a very small pin to test this. So looking at our diagram, our lockup duty solenoid is on pin 15 and our forward reverse solenoid is on 16. So pin 16 and 15 are here and here. I should have continuity to the case on one of those pins. And I don't even feel a pin in that location or that location. So Like I was thinking, a lot of these are labeled wrong. Even though the connector housing is labeled, this is not the same pinout as what they gave us in the service information. One is 16s over there. No, it's still the same, but it's wrong. Maybe they're telling us to look from the back, but they labeled it on the front. Whatever that may be. I got a different thickness probe. Maybe I just wasn't making good connection. Let's start back over on this side. And over here where it says pin 1, I'm pretty sure this is just backwards. I think this is pin 16. We're showing 5.3 ohms. So pin 16, we have 5.3. Let's go to pin 15. 41 kilo ohms. Is that right? Connected to the right pin. At least I think that these are pinned backwards. So the next one we need is pin 48, which should be here if I'm correct, and everything's backwards. So we're at 3.4 ohms. 47. We're 12.3, 30 and 31. No, 30 and 32. So there's 32. We're 6.7. Skip one, go to 32. .4. Okay, so there's our solenoids, there's our resistance. So up here at the top, 3.4, which is in our range. This one here is not, and that goes to our lockup duty solenoid. That one's okay, this one's okay, this one's okay, and that one's okay. So what that's telling us is our ground connection for all those solenoids is good because they're grounded internally to the transmission case. We don't have to worry about our ground wire inside of there, but we have high resistance on that lockup solenoid. We still could have an issue with the wiring. Our next step is going to be pulling this cover off, and we're gonna actually have to physically check the resistance at the valve body itself. If it's open circuit there, or the 41,000 ohms, then we're gonna do a valve body. That's how we do them here. We don't do just the solenoid. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove this valve body. We're gonna remove this top plate first and double check our resistance. So there's a bunch of bolts around the perimeter of that plate. I also removed the transmission control module, this bracket here, blow it off with an air hose, get all that dust out of the way. And then I'm going to grab my scope again, and I'm just going to quickly check this. Now, I don't show it on the screen, but I do check the resistance of all the solenoids, and they did match our initial readings. So this valve body does have a bad solenoid. I did get a valve body, so we're going to go ahead and change it out. I'm going to unbolt this valve body. Just kind of let it rest in there at an angle to drain. I'm just going to flush a couple of fresh quartz in there. We'll drain off the extra later. Put some new O-rings in there. Put the new valve body in. Get everything bolted down, snugged down, and then we're going to torque it. We're going to have to clean up that gasket surface, apply some new silicone at the seam, and then put a new gasket on, put the cover back on, make sure the connector is connected, and reassemble everything. Okay, so I have the valve body in. I haven't even started it up yet. What I want to do is go in, clear the codes, cycle the key, see if the codes come back. Now I'm using Subaru software now because I'm going to end up programming it anyways. I have the laptop connected. So we're just going to go to diagnose here. And actually, it's probably going to fail to communicate because I switched interfaces. Nope, okay, we're good. Must have used this interface last time I worked on it. So it says that we are 2015 model year Legacy Air Outback, and we have the option of SSM4 or 3. 3 doesn't work with the J-Box, and 3 isn't for like 14 and down. It also works on 15s and a little bit, maybe 16, but I don't have the factory Subaru interface, so I can't use SSM3 anyways, or at least not easily. So we are going to use SSM4. We're going to go to all diagnostic trouble codes. What I'm hoping this is going to show us is that our transmission code is now a history code. We'll clear all codes, cycle the key, see if they come back. Okay, now we still have the tire codes. That's understandable. They are history codes. I don't know if they didn't clear when we used the other scanner, or if we just still have some issues. We show history code for that torque converter, clutch pressure control, solenoid control, circuit high. So that is a history code. We put a new valve body in. We should be all good to go. The sun load sensor is going to be current. Now we do have this vehicle dynamic control module system code. This could still be because we have codes in other modules. I'm just going to go ahead and clear all. After we're done, turn the key off. We'll have to wait 30 seconds, turn the key back on, wait 10 seconds, see if any of these codes reappear. Key is on, press OK. It's going to start checking for codes again. I don't have to worry about the 10-second wait to start it because we're doing a code reading process. Normally you'd wait 10 seconds while the throttle body relearns itself. And the only code we have is the sun load sensor. That's good news. But we are going to reflash this because we had that like P10A0 or something like that. There's a 5 in there. I'd have to look at the report. But there is an update for that issue. So we're going to exit out of this. We're going to go back to Subaru Flash Right. Now we can go to the calibration ID number. To do that, we need to look it up. I probably should have just pulled that number while we were in Subaru. But since I forgot, let's just open up Shop Foreman Pro and grab it real quick. ECM, TCM, let's go to Vehicle Info. I don't want to save that. So our engine calibration number is EB4GA03 Charlie. Now, I've made the mistake several times. These are case sensitive. I guess I can't move that one. So cap lock on. Edward Bravo 4 Georgia Alpha 03 Charlie. Hit search. And we have Legacy or an Outback. This is an Outback 2.5 liter non-turbo CVT. So that's what we're going to pick. It tells us that we do not have the jumper test connector. Connector none. Decryption keyword, we'll need that later on, but it's still visible when we get to that screen, so we'll be okay. And the new calibration ID is going to be Edward Bravo 4 Georgia Edward 00 Charlie. So that's what we'll end up with. Now what's weird is some of this stuff doesn't always show up the same. Like depending on what tool you're using and what you're reading it with, it may be a different number. Now this says updates for improved relay performance in cold temperatures, air fuel correction control, and enhanced charging logic. I vaguely remember there being a service bulletin for that active grille shutter, so this is probably an even newer calibration than that. So we're still going to put this in there. I suppose we can look up that service bulletin, but either way we're going to have to flash this. So I just closed Shop Foreman Pro so it's not connected to my J-Box. We're going to select the Outback. This is an Outback. We'll hit continue. Make sure that you turn off all your screensavers. Power settings are good. Plug in your computer. I don't really have mine plugged in, but we have a good battery. Now you have to have a battery maintainer on these. Now these don't like above 14 volts. So I have this one set to like 13.6 or something. My snap-on defaults to 14.2, which is too high to do the programming. It says connect the green D-check connector or jumper harness if necessary. This doesn't have that. And it said no connector required on the last screen. We hit next. We're going to use a generic scan tool, pass through. We're going to pick the Cardac +3. Hit next. The ignition is on. Hit next. The device is ready. Next. Decryption keyword. I still have my cap lock on. We are 8584 Edward Alpha Edward Charlie. Next. Says what our old number is, our current part number, and what our new part number is going to be. So we're only one digit away. Maybe there's some additional information on this in the service bulletin for that active grille shutter. And I think what we'll do after this is we'll build the information in here. We'll pick the vehicle instead of just entering the calibration ID number, and that way we can see if there's calibrations for the TCM. So it wants us to turn the ignition switch off. Okay, hit next. Turn the ignition on. Push button start, so I'm just double tapping it to get the ignition into the run position. Clearing the memory. It is complete. Turn the key off and finish. Okay, let's go ahead and go to vehicle spec. We're going to go to a 15. I just want to see what other issues they have or what other updates are available. Outback 2.5 non-turbo search. So we do have a TCM update. It says federal and California. Bump felt while idling in drive. Engine RPM flare and cruise cancel on uphill grade. Improved oil pressure control. It's probably something we should check to see if this has been updated or not, just because we installed the new valve body and we don't want to have any issues with it. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue, and it's going to check for us to see if this update is valid. Ignition switch is on. So our TCM is not up to date. So there is a new update available for it. Let's go ahead and install that. Transmission controller is done. Okay, so we do have some communication fault codes. That's just because we were in the middle of programming. We're going to clear all the codes, or I just cleared all the codes. It's rereading. We just have this unload code. So we should be all good to go here. I want to, before I even start it up again, I want to go to engine. And we're going to check that active grille shutter. Some of the aftermarket scan tools won't command it on and off, but the factory tool should. So let's go here to active test. It may be under work support, but we'll try active test first. Active grille shutter control. Now, when you use this, sometimes I guess we should go to data first, because the active grille, there'll be a data pad in here that will say learn mode. So I have all the active grille shutter data PIDs selected. Shutter position is unknown. Let's see if there's a learn. Calibration in process off. Calibration status incomplete. Let's go active grille shutter. Select. It is in park. We're not running. It doesn't say if we need to be running or not. I do have the maintainer hooked up, so we have full battery voltage. Select all that stuff again. Calibration is not complete. Do you want to run the calibration? So yes, we're going to calibrate it. So we'll probably miss it, but we could run out there and look at it. It's probably opening and closing right now. It says calibration has complete. We can now run the active test. So now we have data. We have a position visible. Calibration status is complete. So I don't know if we can go here. How do we make this into a graph? So I'm going to open it. So it's hard to see, but there's a little blue line. And we're already open, so I'm going to close it. And we see that percentage dropping on the screen. I know it's hard to see with coloration. but it shows that it did move all the way down to 0%. We're going to open it. We're going to close it again. I'm just doing this a couple times to make sure that it's capable of moving back and forth repeatedly. And it seems like it is. So we're going to stop this test. Now it should save this in our history, so if we ever need to review this, we can see that it completed the test. And it's going to more than likely record all of these PIDs over here, even though we're only graphing the one. Let's go ahead and go back. Go back, save it. I'm going to check for engine codes one more time before we fire this thing up. And then I'll have to let it warm up for a little bit. I suppose we should go to transmission, go to work support, make sure there's no calibration. So let's get out of here. Let's go to transmission, learning values, learning mode. Let's go to service information. Let's verify that we don't need to do that after replacing the valve body. So we're gonna go down to installation. Well, I picked the wrong one. This is a different transmission. We have the 580. There we go. Go down to the bottom and it should give us special instructions for when we're done. Adjust the level. So we should adjust the level before doing the learning stuff. Follow the message displayed on Subaru Select Monitor when working. Perform learning work for the transmission. Kind of vague information. I'm not sure. We'll let's just hit next, see if it gives us instructions. Turn headlights off, air conditioner, turn on the eco switch, turn on sport mode, power hold, turn it off, set to intelligent mode. It doesn't say anything about temperature. I don't see any auto start stop. So we need to let this warm up. I'm just gonna let it sit here and warm up. Okay, so I can't do this learning mode until I have the vehicle on a hoist. I didn't realize it was going to be something I had up in the air, but it says lift the vehicle up and put on the parking brake before we can continue. So when we lift it up, it's warmed up enough now where we can check our fluid level, and then we'll do the learning mode while it's up on the rack, but it'll be a little bit before I have an open rack. Okay, we got the vehicle secured on jack stands instead. Parking brake is set. Turn off the ignition switch. Turn off eyesight. I don't have eyesight. Okay. Wait until RPM stabilizes, which it is. We're gonna go to drive. So I'm stepping on the brake. Fully depress brake pedal and keep pressing. So it's going through some shift control system learning and process. Okay, a couple of bangs. Go to reverse. Neutral. Turn off the ignition switch. And I guess we're all done. So let's just double check transmission codes. No codes stored. Let's go back to our home screen here. And I'm just gonna hit all diagnostic trouble codes again. It takes a little bit, but at least we know that we don't have any codes. I'll probably go drive it, come back, see if I get diagnostic trouble codes again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I don't know if you guys like the longer format like this, where I diagnose something, replace the part, programmed it, or if you prefer me to break it up into small sections. If you guys have a preference, put that down below. I personally if I do it as a long video, I know I'm going to get all the parts in there and released. Where if it's short sections, I'm worried that I'll be missing a clip and I won't have time or something like that, and I won't get the later parts released, or I'll have to split them all up and then make sure I have them all done before I release a single part. Whereas the long videos, if I actually edit the whole thing, then I know I have all the pieces I need, and you know, it's easier for me to release. If you guys prefer the shorter, like 5 to 7 minute long videos, possibly even 10 minutes instead of this is probably a 30-minute video, then I'll shorten them up. If you guys have any questions or comments on what I did, go ahead and put those down below. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, click the bell. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.